What's up, you beautiful chuds, and welcome to the Let's Talk Horror Channel Awards for the movies that came out of 2025. 2025 has been a wild, wild year, and for me personally, it's been an interesting one, but it has been a year that's been filled with witch ladies with impeccable style. It's got emo monsters, sexy vampires, a very non-sexy wolfman. We've got dogs being better actors than most humans, killer MRI machines, and blatant disregard for child safety around cutlery. 2025, as I said, has been a really wild year, and quite honestly, it has been a year that even though we've had so many movies and so many people have absolutely loved the movies that we've got in 2025, it hasn't actually necessarily been a year in its entirety that I've really massively enjoyed. There's been some pretty decent movies, but overall, it's been a year that's been okay for me. And I know that's going to be quite divisive, but guess what? I've enjoyed it enough for me to sit here and do the awards for the movies, horror movies of 2025. So with that, let's get right into the first category.
Best kill.
So for the first category, I like to try and do like one of the big ones, one of the most important ones to horror, because for years and years, we've always been watching horror for, quite honestly, some people watch it for one reason. That is the kills, the horror that we get to see on screen that's depicted in front of our eyes. That's what a lot of people like. So that is why I like to try and do it first. So for best kill, I gave it to a moment that is definitely going to be something that might be quite divisive. It is a moment in the movie that it's part of, where it meant that people either liked it or hated it. Some people really truly hated what happened in this moment, but also people like me absolutely loved it. And I'm talking about the death of Aunt Gladys in Weapons. I absolutely loved this moment in the movie. Weapons was a fantastic movie, a real highlight of 2025. But it was this moment that was so unlike the rest of the movie that really stood out as a moment that I loved, and I can completely see why people wouldn't like it, because this is like, it goes from being sort of like a tension-driven, supernatural horror film, and now turns into like a slapstick comedy that should have like clown music going over top of it. It's hilarious. It goes on for ages. You've got these kids essentially are getting their comeuppance on this horrible, horrible Aunt Gladys, the worst, the worst aunt in the world. This crazy witch lady with great clothing and great attire. She's just such a great character, performed brilliantly. But this moment where all the kids are running after her and smashing through all these houses, all these people are having their breakfast, and they're like, "What the fuck's going on?" It's such a great moment, and the fact that when they catch her, it's like like wolves, eating eating something. You know what I mean? It's very violent, very visceral, very brutal. We get to see it all, but it's just the whole moment that is, where you see the long shots of her running across the fields, the lawns and everything. It's such a funny moment in a movie that really feels out of place, but yet for some reason for me it works. So Aunt Gladys in Weapons, that's my favourite kill of 2025.
Grossest moment.
When it comes to grossest moment, it is, what I mean by that is that it is a moment that really makes you feel that uneasiness, like makes you feel really uncomfortable. And the grossest moment for me, the one that did that the most this year, the one that made me feel so uncomfortable and made me feel, quite honestly, a little bit sick, which doesn't happen very often, is the knife to the teeth in Bring Her Back. The moment where it takes forever to get to the exact moment when it happens, but you know that it's going to happen, but you don't expect it to happen in such a gross and unpredictable way. And the fact that we see it all, and this kid is putting the knife in his mouth, it's gross, it's disgusting, it's brutal, it's visceral, it's violent. We see it all. It's uncomfortable. The fact that it's happening to a kid as well. But it's, like I said, the whole fact that we know that something's going to happen and how long it takes to get to that moment. It's messed up. It's gross. It's difficult to watch, and that's why the knife to the teeth of that poor kid in Bring Her Back. That is my grossest moment of the 2025.
Most frustrating moment.
So when it comes to most frustrating moment, it can be loads of things. It can be a character in the movie. It could be a scene in the movie. It could be the score. It could be something, anything that it could be in the movie. But with this is something that was such a huge disappointment to me for something that is actually something that's so iconic. And it was a real disappointment, but a real frustrating moment for me. And the reason it's frustrating is because of the person that created it. So my most frustrating moment of the year of 2025 was the aesthetical look of the Wolfman himself in The Wolfman. He looked like he should have been in Wrong Turn or Hills of Ice. It looked awful. There was no iconography. I know that they went for that sort of more realistic approach, and the practical effects around it are fantastic, but the look was so awful that it was off-putting, and it made me dislike the movie even more. And I had real high hopes for the movie because it was directed by Lee Wannell, and Lee Wannell has been a mainstay in the horror franchise and horror history. I mean, he's there, right? And he's such a great writer, but he's shown that he can be a fantastic director with his reimagining, his re-envision of The Invisible Man and what he did with that, and that was fantastic. And even though it was something completely different, and I sort of, maybe I'm to blame really, because I should have thought that it would have been so different because of Invisible Man. In fact, I'm only really just thinking about that now. Maybe I should have thought of something a little bit, that he would have done something a little bit more different with it. So that's on me. But at the same time, I just didn't ever think that we were going to get what we got. And it's awful. It looks awful. And there is no form of... it just felt like there was no understanding of the character of the tragedy of the character in regards to the movie itself. But we're just talking about my most frustrating moment. There's a lot of frustrating things about the Wolfman and how it could have been a million times better, but the look, the aesthetical appearance of him was awful. It's disgusting, but not in a good way. Even the transformation scene isn't very good. It's awful, and it looked bad. And if it had been a little bit more reminiscent of everything that came from the past, if it actually looked like a Wolfman, I would probably give the movie a little bit more slack. And that could have been one of the good takeaways from the movie. But it absolutely wasn't. It looks awful, and I hated the aesthetical look of the Wolfman. So that's why that's my most frustrating moment of 2025.
Most disappointing.
But we go from most frustrating moment to most disappointing film. You would think that they sort of would go hand in hand, but they don't, because I've done two different categories. So there we go. But my most disappointing film of 2025 was a movie that I was really, really looking forward to. Body horror is something that really has had sort of a comeback on the mainstream. It's always been around, but ever since, say, like The Substance and sort of movies around that time, a little bit before, and now, it's sort of coming back to the big screen and going a little bit more mainstream once again. And the good thing about it is that it means that we're getting the opportunity to do more practical effects, although this movie did a lot of CGI as well as mixing practical effects, which is fine if it works. This film didn't necessarily make it work. But my most disappointing film of 2025 was Together. I really wanted to like this movie. I really wanted it to be what I think it could have been. But everything that I wanted it to be, it wasn't. I think it was written incredibly badly. I think that the mistakes that the characters are making as human beings in the movie are so bad, and they're so apparent to get to where we go in the movie, that it's awful writing. We have these characters where it feels like a Hallmark movie, where they're sort of struggling with their relationship, and they go searching for their relationship somewhere else. They go somewhere else, out of the big city and stuff like that. Once again, very Hallmark like. But straight away they go venturing somewhere they don't know. They go into the woods and make this awful choice where they're going. They don't know where they're going, but I'm sure it will be fine. But we all know that it won't be. But then the weather gets worse, and rather than turning back, they keep going. And then they just continuously make these awful choices, and then they fall down this hole. And then instead of getting panicky and without sort of building that tension and dread about like what's going to happen, they're pretty chill about it. They don't really care about it. And it's wild to me that it's sort of like so lackluster. It's so wild to me that these decisions, these awful decisions for these characters are being made for the purpose of telling the rest of the story. They fall down and then they drink out of a lake, they literally are talking about how they know nothing about survival, nothing about how to do this, but they still do all the things that they know and you as a viewer know they shouldn't be doing, but they're doing it for the purpose of the movie. But it doesn't work for me, and I'm gutted. I'm genuinely gutted because Together is a movie that a lot of people really liked, and it's a movie that I was really looking forward to because I do love body horror and I do love the fact that we're getting it more and the opportunity to see practical effects. Although, like I said, unfortunately, there was a lot more CGI in this movie than I thought there would be. But to see these sort of movies back on the big screen, it was so disappointing. And I remember finishing watching it at the cinema, and I was really disappointed. I watched it again, continued to be disappointed, and I just think it wasn't the movie that it could have been. And I'm genuinely gutted that it's not the movie that I was hoping that it was going to be. So my most disappointing film, and nobody said these categories always have to be about the good things. They can be about the bad things as well, which is why my most disappointing film was Together.
Worst film.
Now, keeping on trend with the worst parts of 2025, I'm going to be going through the category of my worst film of 2025. Now, this one is always going to be one that's quite divisive because this is all down to interpretation, our own individual interpretation. This is the movie that I thought personally was the worst movie of the year, but I sort of had to do two. So I'm actually going to let you decide as to what you think officially should be my worst movie of the year, because the first movie that I'm going to talk about was so bad that I didn't even watch it all. I had to turn it off because it was awful. It was just looked awful. It was structured badly. It was performed badly. And I watched about half an hour or probably more of it and then turned it off. And that was Hell House Lineage. This franchise as a whole, and it obviously is a franchise now, hasn't necessarily been great. I think the first one, I liked the first one, but I thought like the supernatural route that they take, it was actually the worst decision that they made for it. I liked if they'd have found a way of grounding it more so in the reality of everything is going, but then it goes, it goes more Hollywood horror when it goes supernatural route. And then obviously everything after then has just, been fucking wild, and it is what it is, and it almost feels like they're like really stretching to try and figure out where they go with the story. And Hell House Lineage felt like that. It was awful, so I turned it off. So this is why I've added another one to my worst film of the year, in case you don't think that's fair, because there was a movie that I watched all the way through that I thought was absolutely atrocious. So the other movie that I've put in my worst film of the year was Fear Street Prom Queen, or whatever it's called. It's atrocious. It's awful. Once again, it's a movie that a lot of people liked, but for me, no, it wasn't for me. It was another movie that's going on this trend, and a lot of movies are doing this, where they're sort of like budgetary wise, they're a little bit cheaper to make and so on like that, but also they fit in this sort of like social algorithm world that we live in, where everything Stranger Things, everything has to sort of be nostalgia bait and stuff, and obviously Stranger Things has done that so well and been so successful that they go, well, we can try and go off that success. And Netflix, obviously being the ones to bring out Stranger Things, also bring out Fear Street. So they were like, well, why not do an 80s sort of style, Fear Street Prom Queen? Because of course, Prom Night and all these sort of movies, Carrie, all those sort of movies, I mean, they are horror movies and so on like that, and they are set when they were, and you can go back to that time with these sort of movies, but you've got to do it right. And this movie didn't, because it just genuinely felt like everything was just awful set dressing, and it felt like people were literally just of modern day time doing cosplay of the 80s. They put the most popular songs that they could afford to put in it, because you go, oh, nostalgia, remember this song, or like, oh, look at those people, look how 80s they look. It was so badly created in regards to set design, in regards to costumes and so on. It just felt so fake. As I said, it just felt like it was a party, like a kids' party, where they were like, come dressed as somebody from the 80s and we're going to have 80s music. And that was the movie. But on top of that, it was performed badly. It's a movie where once again, we have this like common thing that happens in movies now where we have ensemble casts. And when we had like the 80s and the 90s and so on, we had big casts. You had smaller casts, but when you had an ensemble, you had a big cast. It never felt sort of overpopulated because it was the characters were written and performed so well that you actually gave a shit about them. Now we get so many movies where characters aren't written well, they're not performed well, and you don't care about them, and you know that their job is there to do one thing, and that is to die in horrible ways. In Prom Queen, whatever it's called, you don't even care about these characters, and when it happens to them, you don't even care that it happens to them because it's not even that creative, it's not that inventive. I think there was one kill in there that was like all right, and that's it. So in total, in regards to like the whole movie, it just sucked. Once again, any movie that sucks is disappointing to me because I don't want to dislike any movie because people are creating stuff. People are putting their heart and soul into something, into creating something. It just doesn't always work. And Fear Street Prom Queen was one of them. But like I said, you can decide what officially is my favorite. If you think that a movie that I got half an hour through and turned it off because it was so bad, if you think that's my least favorite movie of the year, then Hell House Lineage, that wins. But if you think it has to be one that I watched all the way through, then Fear Street Prom Queen is also a film that I really, really disliked for 2025.
Most underappreciated.
So when it comes to most underappreciated movie, this is a movie that I absolutely loved, and it is also a movie that a lot of people loved, and commercially it did really well, critically it did really well. But for some reason, it was just a moment, and then people sort of stopped talking about it. And now, as we are now in the new year and towards the end of last year of 2025, people are starting to bring out their top 10 lists of the year or doing their own awards and stuff and things like this. But this movie really hasn't like been on a lot of people's top 10 lists. And of course, this has been a year, well, 2025, sorry, has been a year that was filled with so many horror films. I've probably seen more horror films this year and tried to do my best to see as many than I've ever seen in a year before doing Let's Talk Horror. I always try my best to watch as many films as I can. And this year, well, once again, 2025, so last year, the movies of 2025, I tried my best to watch as many as I possibly could so I could give you the best version of the Let's Talk Horror Awards I could. And seeing all these posts that people are doing about it, this movie isn't on hardly anybody's lists. I think I've seen it on like one person's list, and it was like right at the bottom. So my most underappreciated movie of 2025 is Final Destination Bloodlines, because it's a movie that I absolutely truly enjoyed. Once again, I've watched it twice. I've watched it at the cinema and I watched it at home, and I enjoyed it both times. But the reason that I love it as well is not that it's just an enjoyable movie with great death scenes and great characters and people that you know they're going to meet their demise in horrible ways, but it's still interesting to find out how. And that's the enjoyment of Final Destination, is the how. How is it going to happen? And the how exciting it is. And it is a very exciting moment. It has a great opening set piece. It continues to be great throughout. I think it truly is a highlight of 2025. But also what I love about it is that it feels so reminiscent of everything that came before it, Final Destination wise. It is a very, very good reinvention. It's not even a reinvention, it's just a very good continuation. That's a better way of putting it. It's a great continuation of Final Destination because it feels new, it feels fresh, but also it still feels part of that franchise, part of this world. And I love the Final Destination movies, even the bad ones. I love them. I mean, there are no bad ones, there's just some that aren't as good as the other ones, right? But I love Final Destination. I think it's such a fun franchise. I love watching them all sort of, as close to each other as I can. And I do that quite often. But I'm happy that Final Destination Bloodlines is a movie that you can do that with, right? You can add it into your watch now. And it wasn't something that let the franchise down. In fact, it's a movie that a lot of people think that it's their favorite or one of their favorite of the franchise. But for some reason, it isn't on people's lists. And that's a shame. So, and I think it should be. So that's why my most underappreciated movie is Final Destination Bloodlines.
Best score.
For those that love movies, those that love filmmaking and everything that goes into the core of what a movie is. You know that the score is something that can make or break. Like so many things in the movie making process, things can make and break a movie, and the score is something that's so important. It has to be natural, it has to be organic, it has to be something that lends itself to the idea, the concept, the story, the structure. Everything that you're seeing on screen has to have the right score to go with it, or it doesn't feel right, it doesn't work, it doesn't become what you hope that it's going to be. It becomes something completely different. The score is integral, especially to horror. It's so important to horror to give you the sense of how you're supposed to feel. And this score for this movie is one of the most easiest examples of the depiction of the essence of what this movie is. So my favorite score, and also I sort of wish I didn't choose this because there's no way I'm going to be able to pronounce this guy's name. But Ludwig Schaffen Göransson, which is, I apologize, it's wrong. Maybe I should like dub the right thing from Google over top it. I'm not going to, but I apologize. But he was the composer for creating the score for Sinners. That is a fantastic score. It is heavily influenced by blues, but there's something more there as well. But it is so integral to the essence, the core. It's so natural with everything that happens in the movie. It's a fantastic score to listen to like on its own outside of the movie itself. But when you put it in, the concept of what the movie is and you play it throughout, it doesn't stand out. And then you go, well, that it doesn't work. It makes the movie work even better, and that's the importance of a fantastic score. So, Sinners, Ludwig Schaffen Göransson, which is completely wrong, but I apologise. But you know who you are. You get the best the category for best score. You win, Sinners.
Best set design.
In a world full of, it sounded like a trailer then, in a world full of green screens and screens and blue screens and like CGI, you can shove people in front of these screens now and then CGI everything. We are in that time in the world now, but every now and again, a movie gets the opportunity to create incredible sets and gets the budget, and a movie benefits from that because we get to be taken on more of a cinematic journey, so to speak, because we know that it's all real and so on. So my favorite for best set design is Frankenstein. I mean, really, it sort of sums it up that you just have to look at one scene in that movie, but you can do that with everything. But the set design on Victor Frankenstein's laboratory, it's so incredible. It's so grand and vast in scale. You know that if you see the behind the scenes, so much of that was created for real. It's a real set. It's a real set design. It's so massive. But the fact that everything's there to touch, it's tangible. The actors and everybody involved can be part of this set, and then it helps the performances, it helps the movies, it brings this realism to it. Frankenstein, the set and the set design in Frankenstein is, it feels very classic. It feels very movie-like, something that we don't really get that much anymore. And of course, if you're given the budget to do it, you can do it. But it's great when we do. So this one was a pretty easy one for me because as good as so much set design has been in so many other movies this year, when you get something on such an incredible scale as you do in Frankenstein, that's all physical. Of course, I'm not saying that it didn't use CGI, but it was also using a lot of practical sets. It looked phenomenal. So Frankenstein was my favorite in regards to set design of the movies of 2025.
Best cinematography.
So if you know Let's Talk Horror, you know of my love for cinematography, and you know my love for film and that cinematic look, a look that we don't necessarily get too much more anymore because of the accessibility to, and do you know what, it's great, the fact that anyone now, the accessibility to be able to shoot on digital, to make it quicker, to make it cheaper, is incredible. But also the sad part about it is that cinematography is starting to feel like it's more of a lost art. To create the look on screen of old school movies, because of where digital is and the digital age of filmmaking, it just doesn't look right. That's why my favorite in regards to cinematography of the movies of 2025 goes to Sinners, because it's a movie that was shot on film. It's a movie that looks absolutely incredible, and it is a movie that makes you remember how incredible that cinematic look is. As I said, it is becoming, feels more like a lost art, because the accessibility is there for people to just pick up even now a phone now and go and make a movie. But just because you can do that and tell a story, it doesn't mean the aesthetical approach, the aesthetical look of it is going to be any good. And there are a lot of movies that are now just point and shoot and they look awful. A movie like Sinners that you know, yeah, it got the budget to go and shoot on film, but if you give a movie a chance like Sinners or other movies the budget to go and do that, we get something that probably more than likely will win or be up for awards for things like cinematography and so much more. So the look of Sinners is great. You can go to Google Images and you can type in Sinners, and it will then give you a new wallpaper for your desktop background. You know, like, it looks so great, this movie. And for me, being somebody that loves the cinematic movie look, I love it when we get to almost be taken back to a time when movies look like this, but they should look like this all the time, but they don't, which sucks.
Best practical effects.
Practical effects are something integral to horror. It's been integral to the history of horror. It's been integral to the history of cinema, because horror has always been at the forefront of practical effects. Of course, it's going to be with everything that it shows in the movies and everything that's depicted on screen for us as the viewer to see. But also, it's something that we are always in awe of. And when I watch movies now that have practical effects, it sort of makes you feel like a kid again. When you watch these movies and you were sitting there going, how did they do this? Rather than just sitting there, like, you almost get taken out of it at the moment, where you're enjoying what you're watching, or sometimes you're watching something and you don't like it, but it's still got those practical effects where you're like, wow, how did they create this? It's a real tangible thing that people are using to perform, are using to show us the horror that is on screen. I love practical effects. It's been a big part of my love for horror, and I know it has been for a lot of people. So that's why my winner for practical effects in the movies of 2025 was Frankenstein, because, like I've already mentioned, you know, with set design, they tried to do a lot of stuff practical with this movie. But what I loved with Frankenstein is that, for one, the look of Frankenstein, I know a lot of people, you know, thought he was a bit like emo looking and so on like that, which is fine. Like, he does a little bit, right? But I liked the fact that he still felt otherworldly. I love the fact that it didn't look like they had just painted a person. It looked great. But what I loved about Frankenstein is the practical effects in regards to showing you more than what I actually thought. There's a lot more gore and blood and guts and everything in Frankenstein than I thought there would be. Way more. I did not think that it was going to show me, or show us as the viewer, everything that it did. And I'm really happy it did. But I love the fact that it was practical. Like I've already said with Frankenstein, in another category, that of course it's going to use CGI when it needed to, but Guillermo del Toro, he is always going to be someone that does what he can to create something that's real, that feels real, that is real. He's always going to try and do what he can for practical effects, and it's shown throughout Frankenstein. This movie looks great in regards to practical effects, but I love how it went a lot further than what I thought it would do. And we benefit from that because we get to see practical effects in a big way in a big movie, in a big budget movie. And we get to once again feel like a kid again, where you're like, how did they do that? And it looks incredible. So Frankenstein wins my favorite practical effects of the year.
Best editing.
So best editing is a category that I have no idea why I don't normally do it. And there's a reason why I've put it in this year. And it's not necessarily good reason, and I'm going to talk about why. But I have added it into this year, and I should have done it all the time because editing is one of the most important, aspects of filmmaking. Because really, it is the thing that makes things work, and it makes the things that don't work and makes things feel out of place if they're not editing something properly. I mean, I've watched so many movies this year, whether they're of now or of the past, that have been so edited badly that you're like, well, this doesn't make sense, and so on. So editing is really, really important. And to this film, and for this person who edited it, I'm actually quite pissed off. And the reason, and this is why I've added it in to as a category, because my favorite movie of the year in regards to editing, I've given to Good Boy, and there's a big reason why I've done that. At the moment, and as this comes out, we're now sort of in award season, or we're getting to award season. Some of them are already happening. And Indy the dog, who's the incredible dog in this movie, who gives a great performance, who's a gorgeous, smart dog, is already winning awards. What isn't winning awards and what isn't getting nominated is the reason that he's been able to have that performance in the movie, and that is through the editing. The filmmaker Ben Leonberg, he directed the movie, but he also edited the movie. If you know anything from behind the scenes of this movie, and I try, I love looking into the behind the scenes of movies. This is an independent horror that managed to got a chance to go onto the big screen. It's now got critical commercial success. It's now winning awards. What the dog is. It's such a huge success story for Ben Leonberg and everybody involved in creating the movie. But if you know anything behind the scenes, it took a long, long time to make this movie. And the editing process for this movie was a horrible, horrible process, because then behind the scenes, as amazing as Indy the dog is, you can't turn around and say to him, right, in this scene, this is how you're supposed to feel. And this is what I need you to do. When it comes to having a dog as an actor in the movie and trying to deliver a performance, that comes down to the editing. The editing is going to tell you how this dog is supposed to feel and how you're supposed to feel watching it. And the fact that it's getting no recognition is absolutely wild to me. If Indy the dog was getting every award and it wins an Oscar, but yet the editing was as well, I wouldn't have a problem with it, and I'll be like, good, because Indy deserves as many treats as possible. But Ben Leonberg also deserves as much possible, because he is the creator of the emotion of what the movie is. And behind the scenes, those moments where Indy might be looking scared or pensive, and all those moments, well, behind the scene, they're like waving a toy at him just so they can try and get a shot of that moment that they're like, that will work and I can edit that in. It's wild to me that there is getting no recognition for the creation process, the editing of this movie. When as great as Indy is, there's only so much that he can do, and if you just literally do a whole film and just go, right, that's what I filmed and put it together, it wouldn't have been what it is if you didn't have somebody who understands how to edit a movie to make the viewer feel how you're supposed to feel in those moments. And that's incredibly difficult if you've got an animal that is doing that performance for you. And the fact that he managed to create what he did, that once again is having critical and commercial and award success, the fact that he's getting no recognition for it is insane to me. So best editing for me is Good Boy, and I hope that, I don't know, if anybody watches this, which I never expect anybody to, but if they do, I hope you sort of understand where I'm coming from, and I hope that more sort of starts happening when it comes to the editing, because it should be rewarded big time for what they accomplished in this movie.
Best performance.
So we are now getting down to the last categories in the Let's Talk Horror Awards for 2025. This next one and the ones come after it, of course, are big ones. I in regard to the categories, I think they're all very, very important to the creation process of a movie and what we're supposed to see. But these are really big ones because, once again, they can really make or break the movie. So this one being Best Performance. There's been a lot of really fantastic performances this year. And there was one that I thought was really fantastic, and obviously, you know, it's already become quite an iconic character. But also, they felt more like a side character. You know, they only came into the movie a little bit, and so on. There's been great performances, but this performance is a heartbreaking performance because it is a performance that makes you not know how you're supposed to feel in so many moments, and that is Sally Hawkins' performance in Bring Her Back. It is a stunningly effective performance where you feel something for this person because you know they've gone through so much, but at the same time you never expect a human being to go through, well, to put other human beings through the brutality and the vicious violence nature that she does in this movie. This movie is so unsettling, and a lot of that is down to, you know, filmmaking, but performance is something that's always going to be something that drives, or one of the most important aspects of driving how you feel as a viewer for the movie. And if the performances don't work, the movie doesn't work. And everybody in Bring Her Back nails it. It is a movie full of a small cast, but full of fantastic performances, and everybody is great. But being essentially, for me, sort of led by Sally Hawkins in regards to um, the the heights that you go with her performance is is incredible. Her performance in this is so tragic, but also so sinister, so horrible. She is the bad guy of the movie, but yet at the same time, you still can't help but feel a little bit sorry for her, even though she does horrible things. And that is so incredible that there is a performance that makes you feel like that. And you have to have a certain performance or a certain actor or an actress that can deliver something like that. Sally Hawkins is absolutely one of those that delivers a performance that is gut wrenching, that is emotional, that makes you feel sorry for somebody that really you probably shouldn't feel sorry for, but you can't help it. And then you hate her. You love her, you hate her, you love her, you hate her throughout the entirety of this movie. And she does the most horrible things, but it's all led and all created because of incredible performance. We wouldn't feel the way that we did watching this movie if it wasn't for how incredible she is in it. So my favorite performance in a movie, in a horror movie of 2025, was Sally Hawkins in Bring Her Back.
Best director.
So when it comes to best director, you would probably think it's sort of a given, right? Because I've sort of, when it came to editing, I was already talking about a filmmaker and their importance to what they did to create the movie that they did, right? Well, that's not who my favorite director is, because my favorite director is actually directors. Because my favorite directors of 2025 was Michael and Danny Philippou, who created Bring Her Back. I love these guys. They are so exciting. They are bringing something so exciting to the world of horror that I cannot wait for everything that they do. Of course, yeah, I mean, it's wild to me that this is only Bring Her Back is their second movie, their second feature film. And what's insane to me, so they did Talk to Me, which was obviously their first feature film. And when that came out, I watched the trailer. I was like, this looks great, like visually stunning, the great trailer. It looks interesting. It looks creative. It looks intriguing. I couldn't wait to watch it. And then I started looking more into like who made it and stuff. And I was like, I'm sure, like, for one, these guys are so young. So how incredible is that they're getting the opportunities to do this? But I was just like, I'm pretty sure I've seen these guys somewhere, and it didn't clock until I started looking into more of it that they were from the YouTube channel Raka Raka, and I was like, that's wild that the people that I've been watching for years making these insane videos, these are the people that have created, you know. And if you've seen the interviews doing promo for the movies and stuff, these guys are crazy, they're wild, and I love them. They're so much fun, but they do not seem like the type of movies that are creating the horror that we see on screen. And what they're creating is really incredible, and I think they're fantastic at what they're doing, and I'm so excited for everything they do. But Talk to Me was a fantastic movie. Bring Her Back is another fantastic movie. But what I love is that they're already establishing their own sort of style. You can see the familiarization or the familiarity between Talk to Me and Bring Her Back. There is the same sort of essence, the same sort of style as filmmaking, but it looks great. Visually, the movies that they do are fantastic. Bring Her Back is a visually great movie, and they do some fantastic shots, great setups. The cameras are exactly where they need to be. There's a moment with one of the characters, where they might be getting drowned. I'm not going to say too much in case people haven't seen it or whatever, but the shot of that is the most perfect shot of that moment that it needs to be, to really depict the point of that moment, or how we're supposed to feel in that moment. And you only get that through great direction, people that really know the movie that they're trying to make, and how to depict that and to show us, the viewer, what we're supposed to feel at that moment, and everything. So Bring Her Back, fantastic movie, but it only is fantastic because it gets great directors. But also what I love about them as directors, and what they've done in Bring Her Back and Talk to Me as well, is that they're fantastic at creating worlds. Bring Her Back, maybe a little bit less so than Talk to Me, but they're great at making movies where we're interested in the present. We're interested in understanding more about what is happening now in the movie and where it goes. But also there is always a past, and there is always a future. We're always interested to go, well, where did all this start? Where did it come from? Like all the demonic possession sort of weird stuff that's happening behind the scenes. Bring Her Back could have just been a very, very dark, but very well directed drama about loss and about everything that happens in it. But instead, they add this, being what the movies that they're creating and writing, they're creating horror, they're creating this demonic possession sort of side of it. But you're interested in it because you're like, well, where does all this come from? Why is it coming to fruition the way that it is in the movie and Bring Her Back? And of course, we get that in Talk to Me, where we get the present, but we also know that it came from somewhere, and we want to see that, but we also know it's going somewhere in the future. So we want to see that. These guys really know what they're doing. And it's such an incredible time for horror right now, having them, these young guys creating such incredible movies at a very, very high premium level. It's very exciting for horror. I cannot, I hope that these guys do either stick to horror or continue to create horror movies as well as other movies, because I'm always going to be excited as to what they do. They are a true talent, both of them. And I love everything they've done so far. And 2025, we got Bring Her Back, and it's another fantastic movie, but it's only made brilliant because you get great people directing it, like Michael and Danny Philippou.
Best movie.
And when it comes to best movie, of course, it's pretty much the biggest one of the year. And of course, I've seen a lot of people out there putting out their best movie of the year. And it's always interesting. And also, it's always going to be divisive, because my favorite movie of the year might not be your favorite of the movie of the year. And guess what? That's all right. Don't worry about it. It is what it is. It's meant to be like that way. But also, you can probably gather already what my favorite movie of the year. But to get to that point, it's been a really interesting journey for me, because, of course, when it comes to favorite movie, well, we are all on that journey throughout the entirety of a year. We go from the start of the year to the end of the year, and we watch a movie and we're like, that's rubbish, or that's not very good. And then we watch a movie and we're like, oh, okay, that film's a million times better. That becomes our favorite movie of the year. But throughout the year, that continuously happens until we get to the end of it. And you have to do, obviously, what I've done, which is really sit down and think about it. And for a long time, my favorite movie of the year was not what I have chosen. It was only when I was really sat down and I was sitting there and I was thinking about how I look at horror movies. And I speak about this a lot on the channel, on the podcast, on videos. There are two things that are integral to horror to create not only something that is incredible for present day, but also something that creates history. If you look at movies like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, if you look at Halloween, if you look at Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, and so many more of these movies that are now, 50 years old, 40, 30 years old, there's a reason why we still think about them. We still talk about them. They are still prevalent and part of horror now as it was back then. And that is because of two things. Obviously, there's a lot of things, but I always really try and lay it out as to two things. One being unpredictability. If a horror movie can be unpredictable, it is a success. We've seen pretty much everything. There's only so many movies with ghosts, ghouls, and goblins, and movies like that, supernatural movies, body horror movies. There's only so many movies that we can see before we go, well, I know exactly where this is going or what's going to happen, right? If you can be unpredictable, you've already won something. And that's what was great about so many movies of the past, and that is why we still talk about them today. The other thing is iconography. And that can be in anything. That can be in the characters, whether it's the villains or the final girls. That can be whether it's the cinematic look, the aesthetical approach of the movies. It can be the music. Anything can create iconography that can last the test of time. And if you can do that and you can be unpredictable, you have created a movie that will be spoken about in 10, 20, 30 years. A movie that every time somebody mentions it, you get brought back to when you watched it, or you get brought back to the moments of that movie. And I've spoken about this movie already a little bit because this is a movie that, as I said, wasn't originally when I first watched it there, and I absolutely loved it. But I thought another movie, I didn't think about those two things when I was thinking about another movie. But when I did, and I started thinking about iconography, I started thinking about unpredictability. There was no other winner. There was no other film that came really close to this movie in regards to going, okay, like that's hands down the winner because it has those. And that is, so my favorite movie that came out in the year of 2025 was Bring Her Back. And that was pretty obvious, I think, with how I've spoken about it throughout this a little bit. If you didn't guess it, then good. I suppose I kept you on your toes a little bit. But Bring Her Back to me was one of the movies that I watched a little bit later on in the year, and it was a very, very tough watch because it is emotionally exhausting. I've already spoken about it in regards to like the directing, Michael and Danny Phillip who directed it. I've already spoken about Sally Hawkins' performance in it, but it's just a movie that is exactly what it is, and it makes you feel exactly how it wants you to feel. It's a tough movie. It is visceral. It is violent. It is brutal. And one of the other reasons why I chose it as my favorite film of the year is that, in all purposes, this should be the type of movie that I don't like or don't like much. And what I mean by that is, and I speak about this once again a lot when it comes to the podcast and everything, is that I'm not necessarily a big fan of where we are in regards to the world of horror at the moment, because I think this nihilistic, brutal approach to these movies, where there is essentially no hope and no life after it, so to speak, and we're on this journey with these characters and then they all die, or we get to the end and still it's not right, there's still bad things that are happening. I'm not a big fan of that. There is not that much fun in horror in a whole thing. Of course, we had things like, we had The Monkey, or I think it was, that's it, Osgood Perkins' Monkey, and that was like a horror comedy that was really fun. And then, of course, we had like moments in Weapons. We of course had Final Destination Bloodline. So there are moments of of humor and comedy and fun stuff in horror. But as a whole, this genre has really moved to go in telling the brutal side, the dark side of the darkness of what horror can be. And I just don't really like it too much. And also, I just don't really end up liking the movies that much, which is why it was surprising to me that when I started thinking about it, that Bring Her Back was the one that I would choose as my favorite film of the year, because it is probably the most brutal, most honest, most horrible and difficult to watch movie of the year. There are some other ones, but this is a tough watch. And it is not a movie where good things happen. It is not, and it is very nihilistic, and it's so sinister. But yet the reason that it is that I chose it is because it is a movie that does something that a lot of the other movies that are like this don't do, and that is it earned it. It earned it through the construct, the structure, the story, the idea, the way that it was written, the way that it was directed, the way that it's performed, the unpredictability, the iconography, the way that it was put on screen for us to see. It is so expertly done that everything, that every way that you're supposed to feel when you watch this movie, you feel. There is no lulls in this movie. It goes along at a fantastic pace. It's structured so well. And it's just a truly fantastic movie. That it is a movie that when people mention it, I will be instantly taken back to so many messed up moments in this movie, or so many messed up character choices or decisions, or things that happen to these characters that you don't expect, leading into that unpredictability. It is, for me, technically, structurally, and for what we get, the best movie of 2025, and that's what I'm choosing for it. So for the big one, my favorite movie of 2025 was Bring Her Back, and what a fantastic movie. And as I said, it surprised me that it was, but also it doesn't surprise me the more I think about it in regards to how I view and look at movies, and how important these types of movies are to horror and to cinema. So Bring Her Back, what a truly fantastic movie. If you haven't seen it yet, then obviously I advise you to. It is a movie that is on some people's lists of favorite movies. I don't know how many people have it at the top of it, but for me, for many reasons, like I've already said, it is absolutely my favorite movie of the year. But just like this movie that is absolutely wild, and like I said, right at the top of these awards, it's been a wild year. 2025 has had so many movies, it's insane. And from what I can see, this new year of 2026 is shaping up to be the same. We've got some really good movies movies that I'm really looking forward to. Whether they're good or not, well, we'll find out at the end of next year, because we get to the end of this year and I do the awards again, and it'd be so interesting to go through this year, this journey with horror again, and to try and figure out what is going to be my favorite. Hopefully we actually get some good ones and they're not all crap, and then I'll get to the end and go, well, now it's going to be like the worst movies of the year awards for everything. But I don't know. I've got high hopes that we are, from what I can see so far, I feel like there's quite a lot of variety for different types of horror, and I don't know whether this year is the year that I'm a little bit happier in regards to like moving a little bit out of this nihilism that I always keep talking about. I hope that we get that, and I hope that we keep continuing to bring out different types of horror, because that's what we really want. We want variety. But I can only hope that with that variety, we do start to get a little bit more of the iconography. We get a little bit more of the unpredictability. We get a little bit more of spending time with characters that we want to, rather than them being there just to be killed and you not care about it. Hopefully we get a little bit more good stuff for 2026. But as I said, I know a lot of people love 2025, and that's fine. But hey, look, it's 2026 now, and I'm very excited to be on this journey with you all through horror, and have these amazing conversations that I get to have, and I hope that I get to keep having them. If you enjoyed this awards and you stuck around to the end, thank you so much. It means the world to me. Of course, you're watching this on YouTube. If you haven't yet, please subscribe. It means the world to me, but also it helps the channel more than you will ever know. Subscribing is absolutely free. What I put out there is free. I plan to put out as much as I can, or more, in 2026. I do all of this on my own, and it isn't easy. But having conversations with you all over the world makes it incredibly enjoyable to do, and I love doing it. So thank you so much for watching these awards, and then we get to next year and we'll see what happens. But I do want to know as well, and I do always like to know, is that I want to know, and it's up to you how you do it. You can write down the categories that I've done in this. I want to know what your favorites of the year are as well, whether you do that and send me on YouTube, or you can send it to on the socials. We're on all the socials like Instagram and so on. You can send it to me on there. But I want to know what your favorite movie or whatever of the categories of that I've done in these awards. I want to know what yours are as well. I want to talk about horror as much as I possibly can. It'd be interesting to see what your favorites of the years are as well. But there we go. They are my winners. They are my favorites. And my least favourites of the year of 2025. Yeah, as I said, it's been a wild year, but we will see where we go in 2026. But until next time, stay creepy, fuckers.